Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that Israel's forces are one step away from victory. The army says it's pulled all its troops out of southern Gaza, including the city of Khan Younis. But the military says that a significant force will continue to operate within the Hamas-run Gaza Strip. The health authority run by Hamas in Gaza says more than 33,000 Palestinians have been killed since the war began.
This is Khan Younis after months of bombardment. Displaced residents have been rushing back to their homes after Israel announced most of its troops had been pulled out of the area.
It's a shock. A shock. What happened was not small. On my way here in the car, I saw the destruction. It's unbearable. I'm going to my house and I know that it is destroyed. I'm going to move the rubble so I can get a shirt.
A bit further north in Deir al-Balah, much-needed aid arrived at schools and shelters for the first time in 2 months. The need for everything from food to medical supplies is urgent, according to aid agencies. The UN says famine is fast approaching.
Many children have suffered from malnutrition as a result of overcrowding. There have been respiratory and health problems such as hepatitis. All of these things are a result of overcrowding in the shelter because a large number of people left their homes because of the war.
A war that has now lasted 6 months and with no end in sight.
Netanyahu has again said there can be no truce without the release of the remaining hostages being held by Hamas. Addressing his cabinet, Netanyahu summed up what he sees as Israel's accomplishments in the war. Let's have a listen.
We're marking 6 months of war today. The achievements of the war are great. We've eliminated 19 out of 24 Hamas battalions, including senior commanders. We've killed, wounded or captured a significant number of Hamas terrorists. We've cleared Shifa, as well as many other terrorist headquarters. We've destroyed rocket manufacturing plants, war rooms, weapons and ammunition caches. And we continue to systematically destroy the underground tunnels. We're a step away from victory.
Let's bring in Marina Miron. She's an associate professor at King's College London. Welcome to DW. Marina, what do you make of these achievements, as Netanyahu calls them, over these past 6 months now?
Good evening, Marianne. Well, Netanyahu's assessment is very interesting because these are the metrics by which he judges success. However, as has been shown in the past, such as during the Vietnam War, so-called counting enemy's casualties doesn't really provide you a real metric of success of the operation. And what we're seeing right now with events on the ground and the fact that 1 battalion will be left in the southern part of Gaza, we see that the two aims, destroying Hamas was the first one, and releasing the hostages, they have still not been achieved. And the question is, how compatible are those two aims with one another?
Well, you know, as you say, despite the fact that the objective of the Israeli government was the elimination of Hamas, is this at all likely at any point in the foreseeable future?
That will depend on many factors, and we're seeing Israel is under a lot of international pressure right now, especially after the killing of aid workers in Gaza a few days ago. So the UK and the US both voiced a lot of concerns. There are also UN Security Council resolutions on the one hand, so Israel is contingent on external help in order to continue the fight. On the other hand, there are threats coming from Lebanon through Hezbollah. Iran has pledged to avenge the death of its generals in Damascus, so another front could open up. So Israel is now focused on Gaza. However, as we know, there are also cross-border attacks taking place, meaning Israel will have to mobilize more reservists, endangering Israel's own economy. And then you have the people who are demanding the release of hostages, and we don't know how many are alive. So there are a lot of political factors and external factors which Israel doesn't control, which can determine the course of the operation, because after all, the military instrument is subordinate to politics, and what Netanyahu will do and what the ceasefire, the truce talks in Egypt will show will determine the future course of how this war will continue.
And as we just reported, the Israeli army says it's pulled out all its troops out of southern Gaza. What do you make of that?
Well, from my understanding, one brigade of about 1,000 to 2,000 soldiers will still be left in southern Gaza in order to control the corridor to northern Gaza. What I make of it essentially is that Israel might shift to a more localized strategy, meaning that small units will be deployed in order to eliminate Hamas cells, but you will not have the same scale of operations as we had before. The other possibility is, of course, that they are waiting out now, regrouping and hoping that they can resume the operation in Rafah. There may be preparations for some sort of humanitarian corridor, and this time will, of course, allow for humanitarian aid to reach the southern part of Gaza. But from a purely military perspective, the fact that so many Hamas operatives have been destroyed doesn't mean the group has destroyed. So this break means that the group can also regroup and recover, which from a military perspective is not ideal from Israel's point of view.
That was Marina Miron, a military analyst and associate professor at King's College London. Thank you so much for all of your insights.
Thank you for having me.
And in the studio, I'm now joined by DW Middle East analyst Shani Rozanes. Shani, why do you think this is happening now? Is it because of U.S. pressure? It was very clear that the Americans did not want to see a ground invasion of Rafah.
That's true, but if you ask Israelis officially, then no, this has nothing to do with international community pressure, which we've been seeing mounting in last week following the killing of aid workers in the Strip. It could be that they were just using the fact that it's a 6-month anniversary and trying to make it not not connected to any certain events, but sort of make it symbolic. But the military has been winding down operations in the last couple of weeks, and they've been saying that they don't have any need to leave the soldiers exposed. You know, once they are in Gaza and they're not maneuvering, they're not in action, then they're exposed to maybe targeted attacks by Hamas militants. They don't want to do that. So for now, I mean, and IDF, the way they try to sell it, it's always been part of the plan. It does not mean anything about Rafah, because any action taken in Rafah will have to be taken only after the population has been evicted. This is something the Americans are demanding. Israel has agreed to that, and that will take weeks and weeks.
What does this withdrawal mean for this ceasefire deal that never seems to happen, but always so close, right? Yeah,
that's an interesting question, because Israel has always, officially tried to say that the only way to get Hamas to get any concessions and agree to anything on the negotiations about the hostage deal is through applying military pressure, and a lot of it. And this is what they've been doing in the last 6 months. We've seen over 32,000 Palestinian casualties due to that pressure. And so Israel kind of withdrawing its forces, it also means a slow withdrawal of that position of only pressure will be the one bringing any breakthrough in the negotiations. It could be connected to the fact that now we know that the talks are being resumed. There's going to be new delegations going, in and out of Cairo in the next days. Maybe we're in a point now where most points have already been agreed on, and now what's on the table has nothing to do with that. It's hard to say. We really don't know what's happening between closed doors in those negotiations and talks.
I mean, it has been 6 months. How has the view of, I know it's a very divided country, lots of different opinions, but how has the country changed in terms of its perspective on the conflict?
Well, I think there's a slow understanding that something isn't working. Netanyahu kept saying in a very confident voice again and again, Israel will keep on fighting until the complete obliteration of Hamas. They're far from doing that. We've seen rockets against Israel this day from Gaza, as if 6 months has not happened. So it's clear something isn't working. It's clear there needs to be a change, but it's also clear there's going to be a political backlash from the right side of Netanyahu, who want to see more action and not less military action in Gaza. And we'll see how it unfolds in the next days.
DW Middle East analyst Shani Rozanes, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Lisa.